Today we're going to talk about the Roth IRA, and I'm going to cover what a Roth IRA is, and then specifically within the Roth IRA, I'm going to talk about the 5-year rule. So real quick, what is a Roth IRA? When I make a contribution to my Roth IRA, that goes in after tax. So I am going to have to pay tax on it up front. That's something we need to make sure that we are aware of. For the most part, with a Roth IRA, all of my contributions and the growth will pay out tax-free. There are some little concerns that the IRS has placed in our way. And if we step on those potential landmines, then our growth might not come out tax-free. What I'm going to talk with you today about is how to avoid those landmines so you don't get caught paying unnecessary taxes. There are actually 3 different 5-year rules that I want to make sure that we explain. Many times people get them confused. The first 5-year rule that I'm going to explain is your first contributions. This is when I'm making new contributions into a Roth IRA. That gets the clock ticking for me pretty much indefinitely, which is really good. So let's say I made a contribution for the first time to my Roth IRA in the year 2019. And then I wanted to take some money out. I would be eligible over the next 5 years to take out my original contribution amount. However, the growth portion would be taxed unless I waited until January 1st of 2024, which would be 5 years later. Okay, that's important for us to recognize. They always go back to January 1 of the year that we made the contribution for. Okay? Now, with that said, let me explain it a little bit deeper for you also. I could potentially make a contribution for 2019 in 2020 up until the tax deadline, typically April 15th. So, in theory, I could make a contribution on April 15th to my Roth IRA for 2019, and I would still only need to wait until January 1, 2024. That's the 5-year rule for your first contributions. The second 5-year rule that we need to make sure we're aware of is related to Roth conversions. With the Roth conversion, it is still effective as of January 1st in the year that we make the conversion. Okay? So technically, could be just over 4 years that we have to look back. One of the things that is nice with the 5-year rule related to Roth conversions is it goes back to January 1st of the year. So technically, if I did my Roth conversion in December, then I'd only have to wait just over 4 years in order for it to be eligible to take out without having to worry about taxes. One of the things that sometimes catches people off guard with the Roth conversion is, unlike your first contributions, each Roth conversion is going to be treated separately. That's important to note. So every time I do a Roth conversion, I need to make sure I have a new 5-year period that I'm waiting. Other thing that sometimes surprises people is when people do a backdoor Roth IRA, that is treated as a Roth conversion. That's something to be aware of also. Another thing to be aware of is a backdoor Roth IRA is treated as a Roth conversion. The third thing to be aware of with Roth IRAs and the 5-year rule is when you inherit the Roth IRA from somebody else. When you inherit the Roth IRA from your spouse, oftentimes you can just take it as your own personal Roth IRA. However, if you're a non-spousal beneficiary of a Roth IRA, there are a few things that we need to make sure that we are aware of. For example, if the deceased had not placed the money over in the Roth IRA at least 5 years ago, then I need to make sure that I leave that money over in the Roth IRA for at least a 5-year period. Otherwise, I can be subject to tax on the growth portion. That's if I'm taking the money out as a lump sum benefit. Now, there's also a 10-year rule that could apply for a Roth IRA too, if I'm a non-spousal beneficiary. If I want to stretch it out over the 10-year period, I need to make sure I withdraw at least the RMD amount, which is a bit unique because most people don't associate a Roth IRA with a required minimum distribution, but it can be applicable. The other thing that's always good to make sure we're aware of is whenever it comes to the IRS, there's always rules and exceptions to the exceptions. I know we've gone through it, we've talked about the 5-year rule related to the Roth IRA. However, there are some exceptions. For example, if I'm a first-time home buyer, that can be for me or even possibly if I'm helping somebody else buy their first home. Another possible exception could be for qualified higher education expenses or even medical expenses. If you have any questions for your specific situations, give us a call. We're happy to talk through it with you.